So I'd like to introduce our next testimony, Rajiv. He's a good friend of ours, and it's a fantastic, and I hope you enjoy it.
Good evening, gentlemen. It's a great privilege for me to be invited for this Mighty Men's Conference. I would phrase this, it's mighty men of a mighty God. Amen. Right? We're all ordinary men, but we were made mighty by a mighty God. It's never easy for me to share my testimony. I'm Rajiv Guruswamy. I've migrated newly to Australia. I was born to a Christian family, but I didn't know God personally. I was a Sunday going Christian, went to Sunday school just to please my parents. And when I was 10 years old, there was a war that broke out in Sri Lanka. It was a war between two communities, and I belong to the Tamil community, which is the minority. And as a result, all our houses were burned down to ashes. And later on, the mobs came after lives as well. So my father was working in the Middle East, so my mother grabbed me and my brother, and we fled for our lives. We got into a refugee ship that sailed from the city of Colombo, where we used to live, and it took us to the north. It sailed 6 days, and for about 2 years, we spent our life in the refugee camp. I know what it is like to go without a meal for days. I know what it is like to wear the same pair of shorts and maybe a t-shirt for about 6 months. No shoes or slippers on my feet. Absolute terrible conditions. But we struggled, we pulled through. Through it all, I always saw my mother praying 24/7. And I used to think, what is she praying for? If this God is real, why are we in this mess? Didn't make any sense to me. Life went on. I joined the travel industry as a tourism specialist. I met my wife, Maiko. We got married because we loved each other. Everything was perfect. We traveled the world. Life was great. We tried having a child because in our culture, they say parents are against your getting together or getting married. Have a child and they come around. So we did everything possible to have this child. But nothing really worked out. After 5 years, we realized something was radically wrong with Maiko. And I brought her to Australia as well to do some treatments. That was in Canberra. The doctors looked at her and said that she has abnormal ovaries. They termed it as polycystic ovaries. And they wanted her to do an operation. The operation was quite a critical one. And then we decided to go back to Sri Lanka and perform the same operation there because we had friends and family, my family, to take care of her in case something goes wrong. So we went to Sri Lanka, we did the operation still, and very hopeful, but there was no kid. Amazingly, in the year 2000, Maiko conceived. And our son, Ryuma, was born. A beautiful, healthy boy, 10.5 pounds. Life was great, her parents came around, everything was tickety-boo. We were enjoying him and he was such a gorgeous little boy. Again, we were traveling around the world as a family. One of the privileges you have in the travel industry is free travel. So we did everything possible. And then in the year 2006, Maiko became pregnant again. And this time this pregnancy was very painful. She lost a lot of weight. She was short of breath. And doctors couldn't diagnose what was going on with her. When she reached her 5th month, she was completely out of breath. She used to turn blue. And I took her to one of the leading hospitals in Sri Lanka, and a team of doctors started investigating on her, and then they said something is not right. Anyways, some of the tests that came out confirmed that she had cancer in her lungs, primaries in her lungs. It was shocking to us, and then they said probably she might live only for a couple of months. I just didn't know what to do. We were very young. I said no. Then they wanted to start off the treatment, chemotherapy, radiation was started, and then in the whole process, they lost the heartbeat of the little baby she was carrying. So on the 21st of February 2008, they decided to terminate the pregnancy and further carry out the treatment because, end of the day, they were battling to save her life. So when they took this child out, they terminated the pregnancy. The baby came out with a little heartbeat. He was only 850 grams. He was blind because his retinopathy has not developed at all. Lungs not developed. So they just put him in an incubator. So much of tubes, and they didn't let us see him as well because they said that he will pass off any moment. So the treatment started off with Maiko, went on, and then while the treatment was going on, my elder boy, Ruma, was 6.5 years old. He used to visit us to the hospital. So we were on the 6th floor of the hospital, and every time he comes on weekends, he says, "Dada, can I stay with you?" Because he misses us. So my mom used to take care of him during the week, and weekends he comes over. And then I always oblige. He gets into bed with Maiko, cuddles up. When he falls asleep, I bring him to my side, and that's how things went on. So on this particular day, he went to sleep, and I used to wake up every hour to treat Maiko and, to get the proceedings done. And then early morning he woke up, and he's very familiar with the hospital. The nurses push him in the wheelchair, and, very playful child. And then he was out of the room playing with the nurses and the doctors, and at the same time, my mother-in-law was also hospitalized in the same hospital. She was a diabetic patient. And then after about 10 minutes, I get a call from the emergency saying, "Rajiv, can you come down immediately?" So I go down to the emergency, and I see some blood stains on the floor, and I can hear a little boy screaming. So when I went into this room, I saw my son in a pool of blood. And they told me that while he was playing in the corridor of the 6th floor, he has seen the emergency exit. So he went into the emergency exit because he was inquisitive, and the door closed, and you can't open the emergency exit door from outside. So he got stuck in this staircase, and there was a window open, and either he jumped or he fell, and he was just there in front of me in a pool of blood. I spoke to him. He said, "Dada, they are trying to hurt me. Please take me home." So they wanted to perform a surgery on his brain because there was pressure building up. So I gave them permission to sedate him, and the operation went on. And within 10 minutes, the doctors came out, and they said that Yuma didn't make it, and he passed away. So I had to go and give this news to Maiko. All the doctors there chickened out. They said, "Sorry, we can't do it." So I had to, as a father, my hope was in him because there was no hope for Maiko to survive, no hope for my youngest boy who was just surviving in tubes, and I kind of conditioned my mind to somehow bring up Ruma, who was healthy, but he was gone. So, and at the same time I had to be strong to go and give this news to Maiko. So I went and told her this, and I remember both of us came together and we saw him. And she, in a strange way, said, "Rajiv, I also have to go and be with him." So I said, "No, nothing happening that way." So we came back to the room after a few hours, and we get a call again from the emergency saying that my mother-in-law also passed away. Oh. So that was my wife's mother. She went into a coma the moment she heard the news. So all the formalities had to be done, and we had both the funerals together. And that night in the hospital, Maiko said, "Rajiv, I can't stay in this hospital anymore." In fact, she said, "Why don't we just end our lives?" Because it's a blind spot, a dark spot. You can't see beyond that. I said, "No, let's pull through." Anyways, they have given the maximum amount of treatment that they could. So they discharged Maiko, and they wanted me to take her home. So there was a nurse at home, and the treatment was going on. In the meantime, my son, Musashi, was pulling through, surviving only on oxygen and saline. Not even a drop of breast milk or mother's milk. He was just surviving. No weight gain, but he was just pulling through. So I used to go see him in the hospital, come, treat Maiko. This went on for 6 months. It drained me completely, financially, emotionally, physically. But I had to hide my sorrows, my tears, because I had to be this strong man. My family, friends, relations said, Rajiv, you can't show your brokenness, you can't cry. So I put this fake face just to show them that I'm strong, especially to Michael. And on the 30th of June, 2 months after my son died, Michael also passed away. That was one of the most darkest or difficult days in my life, because after burying her, I had to come back to this same house. That there was so much of life, so much of laughter, so much of joy, and everything was gone. No Michael, no Ruma. And I have this little boy, 850 grams, still struggling in the incubator. I remember coming that day, I stopped my car in front of the gate. And I just cried out to God. I said, God, if you are real, just help me to take the next step. Because I didn't know how to even take the next step. I went home, and a church pastor invited me to a men's event like this. It was not a conference, but it was an all men's event. And I told him, I said, what do you think would be the outcome? He said, Rajiv, you have lost everything in your life that a man can lose. And you can't lose anything else. And he said, if you want, just give one chance to Lord Jesus Christ. And he said, you take my word. I said, okay, I'll take your word. In fact, it was a bit of a joke for me. But I went for this meeting. And trust me, God was so tangible at that meeting. Every word that preacher spoke was directly spoken to me, every word. And I was a complete different man when I walked out from that meeting. Now, did this mean that my storms ended? No. So I came back home. Musashi was pulling through. At 6 months, they wanted to do a laser surgery in his eyes because he was blind. I had to sign a document. They said there is a possibility because of weak lungs that he might not come around. So I remember my mother who helped me. My mother was Musashi's mother and grandmother and looking after my little baby. She said, Rajiv, don't do it. Because I will help you to take care of this blind child. Because doctor said he'll be blind, he'll be a vegetable if he grows up. I said, no. I said, God has promised me something and I know he will never break a promise. So I took a step forward in faith and I put my signature. They did his surgery. He was out for about 2 hours. He came around. Life went on. It was never easy. Especially being a single father. I realized what amazing amount of work my wife does as a wife. And I just could not even come close to what she was doing, the love that she showed our children. But my strength and my refuge was God. And I also always pray, God, please, please, please be my missing link. Because I just can't do everything on my own. And He never let me down. It was always my missing links. Life went on. It was a struggle because there was a lot of medical issues my son Musashi had. And unlike in Australia, in Sri Lanka, nothing is covered by medical or insurance. So technically, everything that I saved up to build a house, everything technically was gone for medical treatment. And there are occasions, I used to give him a special infant formula. And there were occasions I went out of my home, not knowing how can I come back with a tin of milk. My mother always supported and helped me in every possible way. But there was this one particular day she said, Rajiv, we don't have milk. I knew it was a challenging day for me. And I can go on listing these days in my life. Dark moments. Absolutely blind spots that I can't see myself taking another step forward. But all that I did was, I just cried out to God. And amazingly, every time, He came through. Not in a natural way, in a supernatural way. Life went on, and it was very difficult for me to manage Musashi. So even my church was concerned, so they prayed that that I would find another partner, but I was very scared because Musashi was so precious to me. And I've heard so much of stories where stepmothers can, ill-treat your children, and, I didn't want to take that chance because I knew God didn't leave me empty-handed. He gave me Musashi as a gift. And I would not do anything to upset or hurt him. And I had this huge doubt. Anyways, I met my current wife, who was also widowed at the age of 30. Her husband died out of a heart attack. For 10 years they didn't have children. We met. And amazingly, Musashi never knew a true mother in his life. The first day I introduced him, he was 2.5 years old. He just called, in Sri Lanka you call the mother Ammi. He just called her Ammi. And I was shocked and Charlie was shocked. She just looked at me. This is how God works. Yeah. But she was not a believer. She was a Catholic. She was again not going to church. She was just for ritualistic purposes going to church, maybe for Christmas and so on. And then we got married. I introduced her to God. Initially, she was quite skeptical. Testimonies, praying in front of people, raising hands, worshipping. At one point she said, Rajiv, are you guys off your head? So I used to pray. Pray in my heart, saying, God, you have always shown me impossible things. I want you to touch Charlie. And through His word, He touched Charlie and changed her. Soon after we got married, after 3 months, she conceived. And we had our son, Nathan. And when he was 8 months, when he was born in 8 months. And when he was 1 month, his stomach started bloating. He had a thing called water retention. So doctors wanted to check up on him, and they opened him. Everything was okay, but they didn't close him up for 2 days, thinking they need to see how his bowel movements are. After 2 days, he developed a temperature, and the doctors said that he had caught an infection. And exactly after 33 days, he also passed away. Oh. And that was a big blow because Charlie has just given her life to God. And then she started questioning me, Rajiv, where is God? Why is this happening to us? Not only Charlie, I started questioning God because this was my second son that I buried. Wow. But one thing I told Charlie was, it was not my words, it was words from God. I said, Charlie, let's be thankful for our blessings and not our missings. I said, I'm thankful to God that He gave me Ryuma for 6.5 months. I'm thankful to God He gave me a wonderful wife in Maiko for 15 years. Wow. And me and Charlie were thankful to God that Nathan was with us for 33 days. And all that I could tell her was, that's all that I can tell you. But I told her, everything will make sense because God doesn't make mistakes in anyone's life. But again, it was a statement. And it's something that you can't hold on to. It's difficult, especially when you're broken. Life went on. Musashi amazingly pulled through. His eyesight was healed by God.
Hallelujah.
The doctors who said he'll be a vegetable, he will have learning difficulties. For those of you who have seen Musashi, he's about a feet taller than an 11-year-old. He's a great swimmer, although he had weak lungs. God restored his lungs. He's a good cricketer. He sings well. He plays all the instruments.